Welcome to another deep dive. You know how this works, right? We get fascinating source material from you, our amazing listeners, and together we take a deep dive into it.
And today we're tackling something really intriguing.
Yeah, this is a good one. Someone sent us this talk by Osho where he ranks the most influential figures in Indian religion.
And it's not just a simple top 10 list or anything like that. Osho really goes deep, dissecting each figure's impact, like what makes them truly stand out in the grand scheme of things.
Exactly. And it's not always who you might expect. Some really big names don't even make the final cut.
I think listeners will be pretty surprised by some of the choices and some of the reasoning behind them.
Absolutely. It's all about understanding their unique contribution, their impact on the evolution of spiritual thought. It's like, who were the real game changers?
Who planted those seeds that grew into entire movements and philosophies?
Right. So if you're fascinated by Indian religion, by the history of ideas, or just love a good deep dive into a thought-provoking topic, well, then you're definitely in the right place.
Buckle up. It's going to be a fascinating ride. And if you love this kind of stuff, don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any future episodes.
All right, so to set the stage, this whole ranking challenge started with a renowned Indian poet, Sumitranandan Pant. He challenged Osho to name the top 12 figures in Indian religion.
And Osho being Osho, he didn't just rattle off a list.
No, he turned it into this whole process of elimination, a real exploration of what makes a figure truly influential.
Exactly. So he starts with 12 names. It's like a who's who of Indian spirituality. Krishna, Patanjali, Buddha, Mahavira.
Nagarjuna, Shankara, Gorakh, Kabir, Nanak, Mira, Ramakrishna, and Krishnamurti.
Now, obviously, we don't have time to go into their whole life stories here.
But we'll give you a little taste of who they were, what they were known for, just enough to whet your appetite before we dive into the ranking process itself.
Okay, so first up, Krishna.
Yeah, pretty much everyone's heard of Krishna. Embodiment of divine consciousness, right?
Yeah.
Known for the Bhagavad Gita.
The teachings on duty, detachment, the nature of reality.
A real cornerstone of Hindu philosophy.
Yeah, for sure. Then we have Patanjali, basically the father of yoga.
He gave us the Eightfold Path.
Which is still incredibly relevant today, right? Millions of people practicing yoga all over the world, still drawing on his wisdom.
And of course, we can't forget Buddha. Talk about revolutionary thinkers.
Buddha's insights on suffering, impermanence, the path to liberation, that really shook things up.
Changed the course of spiritual history.
Absolutely. Next, we have Mahavira, a key figure in the Jain tradition.
Big emphasis on nonviolence and asceticism as the path to awakening.
Then there's Nagarjuna, a Buddhist philosopher who delved into the concept of emptiness.
Emptiness. So like nothingness.
Not exactly. It's more about the idea that nothing has an inherent independent existence.
That's pretty deep stuff.
Yeah, it's pretty central to Mahayana Buddhist thought.
Okay. Then we have Shankara, champion of non-dualism, basically saying that the self and the universe are ultimately one.
His Advaita Vedanta philosophy is still incredibly influential today.
And there's Gorakh. He really emphasized this practical approach to spirituality through hatha yoga and mystical devotion, kind of bridging the gap between, esoteric knowledge and everyday life.
Making it more accessible to people.
Yeah, exactly. Then we have Kabir, the poet saint. He kind of defied religious boundaries, talked a lot about inner devotion over rituals and dogma.
A real spiritual rebel, emphasizing the universal core of spiritual experience regardless of your specific religion.
Then there's Nanak, the founder of Sikhism. He really stressed equality, service to others, and a deep connection to the divine.
His teachings are all about ethical living in community, still inspiring millions of people today.
And then there's Mira, the mystic poet, known for her passionate devotion to Krishna.
Her poetry is just filled with this heartfelt love and surrender to the divine.
Still resonates with anyone who's walked that bhakti path.
Absolutely. Now we come to Ramakrishna, a 19th century mystic. He actually experienced the unity of all religions firsthand. He saw different faiths as pathways to the same ultimate truth, really emphasized the universality of the spiritual quest.
Okay, fascinating. And last but not least, we have Krishnamurti.
He was all about freedom from dogma, encouraged people to think for themselves, to find truth through direct experience.
Question everything, right? Don't just blindly believe what you're told.
Exactly. He wanted people to break free from limitations, especially self-imposed ones.
So that's our starting lineup. 12 incredible figures who shaped the landscape of Indian spirituality.
Each one bringing something unique to the table. But remember, Osho's not just presenting these figures, he's on a quest to identify the most impactful.
The ones who really set the course for Indian religious thought.
And that's where things get really interesting because the eliminations begin.
Right. He starts with 12, and then boom, he whittles it down to 7.
Nagarjuna, Krishnamurti, Ramakrishna, Mira, and Nanak, they're all out.
Wait, Nanak? The founder of Sikhism. And Mira, the beloved Bhakti poet. Why would he cut figures who seem so central to Indian religion?
That's the million-dollar question. And that's where we're going to pick up in part 2.
So make sure you stick around to find out why Osho makes these surprising choices. It's all about understanding the deeper criteria he's using to evaluate these figures.
And trust me, it's going to challenge your assumptions about what truly constitutes influence in the world of spirituality.
So stay tuned and we'll unravel this fascinating hierarchy together.
So yeah, we're left with this question hanging in the air, like why? Why would Osho eliminate figures like Nanak and Mira?
Yeah, these seem so important in Indian religion, right?
Yeah.
Especially Nanak founding an entire religion, Sikhism.
It all comes down to Osho's focus on seeds versus branches.
Okay, seeds versus branches. What do you mean by that?
He's looking for the figures who sparked entirely new movements, the originators, not just those who elaborated on existing ideas.
Oh, see.
So figures like Nanak and Mira, while incredibly influential in their own right,
Oh, of course.
they're seen as expressions of existing spiritual currents. Like Nanak, with his emphasis on devotion and service, he's seen as embodying one aspect of Kabir's teachings.
Right.
And Mira's bhakti poetry, so beautiful and powerful, it carries the flame of Krishna's legacy.
So they're building on those foundations laid by the seed figures.
Exactly. It's like appreciating the beauty of a blossom on a tree,
Yeah.
but recognizing that it wouldn't exist without the seed that was planted long ago.
Okay, that makes sense. So Osho's tracing those lineages back to the source.
To those figures who really represent a whole new paradigm shift in spiritual thought.
Got it. So it's not about diminishing the contributions of figures like Nanak and Mira at all.
No, not at all. It's about understanding them within a broader context.
The lineage, right?
Exactly. Now, it gets even more interesting because Osho doesn't stop there.
He keeps going.
Oh, yeah. From 7, he goes down to 5.
5. Who gets the boot this time?
This time it's Shankara and Kabir who are eliminated.
Hold on, Shankara. With his confound Advaita Vedanta philosophy and Kabir, the rebel poet saint. I mean, come on, these figures seem essential.
Yeah, it's a bold move for sure.
What's the reasoning there?
Well, here's where Osho draws a really subtle but important distinction. It's not just about being original, it's about the difference between elaborating on existing ideas and being the source of something truly novel.
Okay, I think I see where you're going with this.
Yeah.
So how does this apply to Shankara and Kabir specifically?
Good question. Take Shankara, for example. His Advaita Vedanta, it's brilliant. A powerful exposition of non-dualism.
Yeah.
But it's seen as building upon one aspect of Krishna's vast teachings, like a deepening, a refinement of an existing current, you know?
So rather than introducing a totally new concept,
Right.
he's expanding on something that's already there in Krishna's philosophy.
That's the idea. And then Kabir, while he embodies this beautiful unity of devotion and inquiry, his path is seen as emerging from a lineage that includes figures like Gorakh. So again, a key figure, super important, but building upon rather than originating.
Right.
A distinct spiritual current.
Okay, so we're down to 5. Krishna, Patanjali, Buddha, Mahavira, and Gorakh.
Yep, those are the 5.
But then,
Osho throws us another curveball.
what? He eliminates another one.
He does. Mahavira gets eliminated.
Mahavira. But if he's seen as a continuation of the Jain tradition, then why does Gorakh, who synthesized existing yogic practices, get to stay? That seems a little contradictory, doesn't it?
That's a really good point, and it's something that Osho actually addresses directly.
Oh, he does.
Yeah. You see, while Mahavira is obviously a remarkable figure in the Jain tradition,
Of course.
he's viewed as upholding and refining those teachings, transmitting them.
Right, but not necessarily introducing something totally new.
That's it, and that's where Gorakh stands out.
Okay, how so?
Gorakh takes this esoteric, hidden knowledge and he makes it accessible, creates a practical path to self-realization through Hatha Yoga. This was a new beginning.
It wasn't just a continuation.
Not really, no. It was more like a democratization of spiritual practice, you know?
So he took this ancient wisdom and made it available to everyone.
Exactly.
Okay, that's pretty cool. So that leaves us with the final 4.
The final 4, the unshakable foundation of Indian religious thought, according to Osho.
Who are they? Drum roll, please.
Krishna, Patanjali, Buddha, and Gorakh. And the way Osho describes them is so powerful, he compares them to fundamental dimensions.
Ooh, fundamental dimensions.
Yeah, like time and space, or the four arms of the divine.
Wow.
To remove one would be like, well, it would diminish the very structure of spiritual understanding.
I see, like they're so foundational, you can't even imagine Indian religion without them.
That's the idea. Each one represents a core aspect of spiritual practice. Like Krishna, he embodies that integration of action, devotion, and knowledge.
He's the one who tells us that spirituality isn't about escaping the world, it's about engaging with it, right?
Exactly, but with detachment, with purpose. It's like being in the world, but not of it.
Yeah, yeah, that makes sense. And then you have Patanjali, who gives us this practical roadmap to self-realization.
The Eightfold Path.
Discipline, self-awareness, inner peace.
Yeah, like he's this wise sage who gives us the tools to navigate life and find that stillness amidst all the chaos.
Then, of course, you have Buddha, who shines a light on suffering and the path to liberation.
Mindfulness, ethical living.
He provides this profound framework for understanding the human condition.
And how to transcend suffering.
Yeah, powerful stuff. And finally, there's Gorakh, bridging the gap between that hidden knowledge and actual lived experience.
Taking those ancient yogic practices and making them accessible.
Empowering people to embark on their own journeys.
It's like he's opening up a whole new realm of possibilities.
So fascinating how these four figures, even though they have their own distinct approaches, they kind of complement each other.
Create this holistic vision of spiritual growth.
It's like they each hold a piece of the puzzle.
And when you put them together, you get a much clearer picture of what it means to live a truly awakened life, you know?
Absolutely. And what's really cool is that even within each of these pillars, it's so much nuance, so many different interpretations.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
It shows you that these traditions are alive. They're constantly evolving.
Exactly. Like, look at Krishna's teachings in the Bhagavad Gita. So many different interpretations, so many movements inspired by it.
Bhakti yoga, karma yoga.
And Buddha's teachings, which initially focused on monastic life, they've expanded to embrace lay practice, you know?
And engage with all sorts of contemporary issues.
It's amazing to see how these ancient teachings are still so relevant today.
It really is. And, while Osho's ranking focuses specifically on their influence within Indian religion, it kind of makes you wonder, how would this list change if we looked at their global impact?
Yeah, that's a great question. Or their influence on other fields like psychology, philosophy, even art.
I mean, you see traces of Buddhist mindfulness everywhere these days, right?
Oh, yeah, totally. And the Bhagavad Gita's concept of dharma, it's like almost a universal ethical framework.
These figures have transcended religious boundaries.
Big time.
And it makes you wonder, how will their teachings continue to evolve in the future?
How will they be applied to the challenges of our modern world?
That's a really interesting thought. Speaking of interesting thoughts, that extra thought I promised you at the beginning.
Oh, yeah. The one that wasn't even in your source material.
Well, it came to me while we were talking about, the impact of these figures, their legacy.
What is it?
What about their failures?
Failures.
We've been focusing on their achievements, their successes.
Right.
But no one's perfect,
Yeah.
right? Even these incredible figures, they must have their shortcomings, their moments of doubt.
That's a really interesting point. We tend to put these figures on a pedestal.
Like they're superhuman or something.
But exploring their struggles, their flaws, it could give us a much more nuanced and even relatable understanding of them, don't you think?
I think so, definitely. Like, what challenges did they face? Did they experience resistance, persecution?
Maybe even self-doubt? How did they deal with setbacks? Those stories could be so insightful, couldn't they?
Totally. It challenges that whole idea of a straight path to enlightenment, right?
Yeah, it makes it more human, more real.
It reminds us that even the greatest spiritual figures, they had to face obstacles, make mistakes, and learn and adapt along the way.
It makes their achievements even more impressive, knowing they didn't just magically become enlightened.
Exactly. They had to work for it. They had to struggle.
It humanizes the whole path.
And who knows, maybe by examining those failures,
Yeah.
we might actually uncover some really valuable lessons, some hidden wisdom,
It's like finding a crack in a seemingly perfect facade.
and realizing that the imperfection is actually what makes it beautiful.
It's what makes it real.
Exactly. It reminds us that growth comes from our struggles, from those times when we fall short and have to pick ourselves up and learn from our mistakes.
It's in those moments of vulnerability that we often discover our true strength.
Beautifully said. So as you continue exploring the legacies of these amazing figures, remember to look beyond the polished stories, the perfect narratives.
Yeah.
Embrace the complexities, the contradictions, even the failures. That's often where the most profound lessons are hidden.
And if you ever feel lost on your own journey, you know where to find us.
The Deep Dive is always here to help you navigate those complexities, spark your curiosity, and uncover those hidden gems of knowledge.
Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep diving deep.
We'll see you in the next episode.